Hey everyone, and welcome back to the second week. So I want to share I want to go over the agenda of what I want to cover, and I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A at the end in case people have questions. Because I hope the biggest thing I want to get out of this is for people to feel like I can do that too, and I want to do that, and that we don't. So that Flight for USA, my first thought was I'd love if everyone who pledged could get one other person to pledge. Then that would double the number of people who pledged, and that would be great. But I'd like to focus less on the y-intercept and more on the slope. So what I'd really love is for people to feel like I can get more and more people who themselves can get more and more people, so that it was constantly growing, not just one big boost up, but constantly moving up. And because I hope that this technique, the Spodek method, leads people to feel like if I lead someone to act more sustainably, that they will feel joy, they'll feel gratitude toward me, and that they'll feel like, oh, I want to learn this so I can do it with someone else, so I can get gratitude toward me and bring joy to someone else, which is, in my experience, very different. My experience with sustainability being brought to me was always coercion, cajoling, convincing. Bangladesh is going to be underwater, so here's what you have to do, which wasn't really, that wasn't intrinsically motivating. So first, I'm going to describe what we did the first time. So Samantha, you weren't there, but you'll get to hear a description of it. So when you see it, it'll give context to it and structure to it. Then I want to do the part 2 with Ariella, because Ariella was volunteered last time to be on the receiving end of it. And so presumably between then and now, she's done something. I've heard that she has, but I haven't asked her to share what it is. So we'll all get to hear together. And then I'll describe part 2, what happened there, so that you have a feeling for what's going on and you can do it yourself. And then we'll take questions until we're done. And I also want to give some context that I'm in the process of my next book, which will be on sustainability leadership. That book has just finished substantive edits. It's going to go to copy edits, and then the cover design and interior design, and then to start launching it. And it covers my whole story of how I went from not really acting on sustainability to doing what we're doing. And there's a companion book to that, which is the how-to guide to do the Spodek method. So it's the written version of what we're doing here. So you can take notes, but also in a little while, that how-to book will be out. And I think I anticipate that's going to be a free download. So if people, I probably won't remember all of the people who I want to give it to, but if you remember, if you email me and say, send it to me when it's out, I'll send it to you. And I want everyone to have it. I'm also going to create an online course for that, so that there'll be an online course this is partly me practicing for that. So everyone will be able to learn in a more structured way how to do the Spodek method. And on top of that, what we've been doing for over a year now is workshops where they're online by Zoom, and it's 6 2-hour sessions, each spaced a week apart, where if people from this community I'll do a workshop with you guys. So contact me to do it. And some of the people on this call have done that workshop. And if we get time, they can share what it was like, but I think they've gotten a lot out of it. People really like this stuff. And I would really like to give to a community that is pledging to avoid flying in our world. That's like a big deal, because most people are like, not fly? What? Do you want me to like roll over and die? Do you want me never to see my mom again? Do you want me like the economy to fall apart? But we're not like that. We're active. And so I want to give to that community. So at the end, I'll see again if people are interested in doing that. Any questions before I get started and talk about what happened in step 1? I'll give a minute just in case people are finishing their mouths full of food and have to unmute and then come on and ask a question. I'm just kind of giving them a little time here, but if they don't need time, then I will jump in. All right, so last week, you might remember that Ariella was volunteered, and I asked her a series of questions. So it's a 4-step process in the first step. And the main thing is, I don't want to motivate her with extrinsic motivation. I don't want to tell her what to do. I only want to help her do what she already wants to do, but maybe hasn't acted on it yet. One of the things I've learned through doing the Spodek method with many, many people is that everyone has some intrinsic motivation relevant to the environment. Everyone. They might not share it that much, but it's there. The way that all right, the zero, I call it the 0th step, is I ask, is the environment something that matters you enough to act on it? Everyone says yes to that, but it's a nice transition from whatever I was talking about before into this. Then the first question is, I want to evoke the emotions relevant to her, relevant to the environment in her that are there already. If I just say, what emotions do you feel relevant to the environment? It's kind of too broad a question. So I start by saying, do you have, what does the environment mean to you? Do you have any quintessential moments, any experiences in nature that if I said to you, what's nature like for you, that come to mind? It's best if they're formative, and that is to say early in life. And sometimes people pause a bit to answer this, or they're not really quite sure what I meant. But what I usually, there's always something. And even if they grew up in the city and all they had was like a tree at the end of the block, or a pet, or a soccer field somewhere that might not even have had any grass on it, that's enough. And at this first part, I want to focus on them, give them a feeling of, sometimes they'll feel a bit nervous if they think, oh, is this about the environment? Am I about to get shamed? So what I want to do is ask them questions, open-ended, so that they answer comfortably and start feeling more and more comfortable sharing. And oftentimes they'll start really opening up and sharing. And this is really my favorite part of when I do this on the podcast. I really like going through this. So she talked about the redwoods, and I would ask her to share the story. Sometimes I'll say something that helps a lot with people is to say, people grow up by the beach, people grow up in the mountains, people grow up in the woods. There's different experiences of nature. And so yours is unique to you, that no one else has quite the same experience that you do. And that usually opens them up to like why I'm asking. After they've described a bit, then I like to get to a different level of detail where I ask them, can you take us there? Can you tell us, or if it's one-on-one, can you tell us what the sensory experience is? What do you hear? What do you smell, taste, touch, whatever the last one is? And I try to get them to really get in the moment. And oftentimes people will share a touching moment, maybe their childhood, maybe something with their parents, or something where they had this amazing experience. It's always different, but there's often, you can sense there's like some awe and some wonder in there. After they brought me there, then I say, I wonder what was the emotional experience when you were there? Can you name the emotions? And at this point, they usually are pretty happy to. You can usually see that they seem really pleased to share this with you. And so when I say, can you name some emotions? They'll often, there's not that many that you'll hear, but these are emotions that you get with nature, of awe, wonder, connection. Sometimes there's a feeling of, I'm so small compared to everything. My troubles aren't that big anymore, and I can think expansively. Sometimes it's fun or playful. Sometimes there's family. Sometimes there's pets. A lot of times they'll describe about emotions, but I try to get them to say, specifically, can you name the emotions? Because if they name the emotions, it makes the next step much easier. And it often gets them to focus. And the more clear and clarified that emotion is in their minds and hearts in the moment, the more we can work with it. So I think of that step one, it begins with, can you name a quintessential moment in the environment for you? And it ends with them saying the emotions, and me saying back to them, so it's wonder, so it's awe. And they say, yeah, that's it. It's really great when they say, yes, you've named them effectively. Okay, step two is, this is often the more that one is really rewarding, fun. The next one is, I invite you to think of something you could do to act on those emotions, to make them manifest in your life. And there's 3 constraints that have come through experience. It's something that you do yourself. So a lot of people feel like, oh, you know what, I'll get my kids to do something, or I'll get someone else to do something. By all means do that. And I say these words, by all means do that if you want, but that's not this exercise. We learn from our own personal experience, not from others. So it's something you do yourself, something that you weren't already going to do. So if someone says, oh, I go for walks every day. Okay, that's great. Keep doing those walks, but that's not this. And the third constraint is often the more challenging one, which is it has to leave the world better than you found it in some way. So it can't be neutral, and you can't pollute. That's not the goal, though. So I often have to add, a lot of people hear something I didn't say. I didn't say something to fix the world. This is not at all to fix a problem in the world. It's for you to feel emotions that you feel in nature, but in your regular life here and now. So if they come back with, oh, I'll pick up litter, or I'll, I don't know, do something else that you've seen in articles that are like here's 10 things you can do for the environment. If it's something that sounds like that, it's usually not something that this exercise is about. It's really, if they have to come up with it. And the more that you help them, the more you take away from them this experience. So it's tempting to say, oh, how about you do this? How about you do that? But don't do that. Resist that as much as you can. And they'll come up with something that they can do. And often it can take, there's two ways it often goes. One is they've been meaning to try something for a long, long time. And they're like, I've been meaning to, there's this park near me and I've been meaning to go visit it. And I just have not gotten there. Perfect. That fits the bill. Although I will check, is that going to fill you with that feeling of, and I name the emotion that they said. If no, then they're just, no, it's just kind of a checklist thing I wanted to do. I don't think I'm really getting much out of it. Then I might say, well, could it be that? Or if not, then let's table that. Let's get something else. The other thing is, a lot of times it takes a lot of back and forth, and it can take 5, 10, 15 minutes sometimes. But eventually it ends with them saying something like, I will go do some, maybe there's a park at the end of the block. They haven't been to it. It's just recently opened and they want to visit it. Then I say, okay, is it something you're doing that you do yourself? Yes. Now, if they say they want to go with their spouse, I always make sure, if the spouse doesn't want to go, can you still go? Because if it depends on another person who didn't agree ahead of time, then oftentimes it doesn't happen. But if they say, yeah, if the spouse doesn't go, then I'm still going to go. Perfect. And then I say, is it going to leave the world better than you found it? Now, if they just go to the park, they'll often say, yeah, it'll make me happier. Now, it has to be something that is measurable, something that someone else could say, this is leaving the world better. So I once had someone say, well, I'll get one person a smile every day for a week. That's lovely, but it's not changing another person's mood. It has to be something, that scientists could measure. You don't have to measure it. And this sometimes can be a hang up, because people feel like, wait, you're asking me to not fix, you're saying it's not to fix things, but you have to fix things. This is kind of a nuance that can be a little challenging. And that's why you have to do this exercise 5 or 10 times before it really starts clicking, and you start seeing how the switch that happens when they have to be active about it. So it might be that they go to the park and maybe they're going to pick up litter while they're there, or maybe they'll plant something when they're there, or they have to think of something that they'll do, or could be they pick up litter on the way there. Or something that I like to do, because I have this exercise a lot with me, is if it's something that doesn't involve using power, can I turn off everything in my apartment? Well, now everything's turned off anyway, but maybe I could, back before, I would turn off all my screens. Like when I took singing, I would sing and I turn off all my screens to do that. And it seems like not that much, because turning off screens, shutting off my computer and turning off everything, how much of a difference does that make? But it's surprising how much of a difference it makes. In my case, it also led to unplugging the whole apartment. So what they do the first time isn't the magnitude that matters. It's if they really are doing it for their own reasons. Then the last part is to make sure that it's a SMART goal, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound, which in practice, usually, if they say they're going to go to the park, it's, all right, are you going to go once? How many times are you going to go, over how much of a period of time? And then I say, I'd love to ask you how it went. Could we schedule a second call to talk about your experience doing it? And how long would it take for you to do it? That if I ask, how did it go? You can give a meaningful answer. And they'll say, oh, I can do it by tomorrow. Or they'll say, oh, it'll take me a week because I'm not sure when I'll get there. Or maybe they want to go 3 or 4 times and they can go on weekends. So maybe it has to take a month. They'll go once every Saturday for the next month. And then so the whole part 1 ends when you both have on your calendar a time and phone call or Zoom or whatever to meet. And that's what I did with Ariella last time. That's what I suggest that everyone do it the first time, to find someone who's supportive and non-judgmental. describe. It helps also the first couple of times to describe what you're going to do so that they're with you on it. You're not surprising them. You're practicing it, and then ideally you get them to do it back with you. So teaching them what I've taught you, maybe after watching this video a couple of times, or showing them the how-to guide after I finish it, then teaching others really helps you learn yourself, as I'm sure we've all learned from experience. The first time you do it, expect that it won't go that well. Just like if you play a scale the first time or hit a forehand on tennis the first time, you don't do it that well. But you learn and you get it a little better the next time. And you go to some other supportive, non-judgmental friend. You keep practicing. And at some point, like somewhere around 3 to 5 times, you start picking up the patterns of what's going on. I recommend sticking with the script very closely, not trying to wing it, not trying to improvise on your own. Just like when you play scales, you don't improvise when you're playing scales. You improvise after you've gotten really good at something. Then you start improvising and doing it a different way. And that way your personality comes out. Even if everyone follows the same script exactly, your personality comes out the more that you practice it. In the same way that everyone learns how to do a forehand the same way, but no two people hit it exactly the same. Or in a script, two actors playing the same script, none of no two will play the role exactly the same, even though the words are exactly the same. And the difference between how you play it and how I play it is our personalities, our histories, our goals and our dreams and our wishes. So I say this to liberate you to stick with, try to do exactly how I suggest doing it. And in time, you'll find making it your own. Now, I'd like to switch into me doing the second part with Ariella. So the first part is ending with having an agreement of time and place to meet. We're at that now. But before I do that, I just gave you guys a whole lot of what happened last time. Any questions about what I said, how that correlates with what you saw last time, questions on why things are the way they are or are not the way things are not? Anything? I want to give people a chance to ask. And also,
I want to say something, but I want to let other people speak first.
Okay. And also, I'm very curious, are people interested in doing this? If for people who haven't done it before, are you interested in doing it more or doing it for the first time? And also, I'm curious, is it what you expected? Is it something that, is it different than, and does it feel approachable? Does it feel like something you can do? It might take a bit of practice to get it going well, but it's something you feel like you could do to lead people. Oh yeah, you can't, if you try to get them to not fly, if you try to give them something to do, that takes away from their ability. So I don't recommend leading them to try to, if you try to push them to do something, they'll sense it and they'll be like, oh, you want me to do that. And then they're complying with you or you're cajoling them into it. But if you do it a second, third, fourth time with the same person, they may reach not flying on their own. I've had several people pledge to not fly, as you saw on the seven of us, including me. And several people have come to me that I've never suggested to consider not flying. And they came up with themselves. They've said to me, I can see that I'm never going to fly again. Maybe it'll take me 6 months, or maybe I'll drop down to 1 a year where they used to do 1 a month. But they're doing it for their own reasons. That's wonderful. I love that. All right, so Ariella, let's jump into your comment or question.
I wanted to answer your questions first. I was actually really surprised at the exercise and thought about it all week afterwards. And you had mentioned that with some people, you might start with a really broad question about like what emotions or intrinsic values does environmentalism or living sustainably have for you? But instead you went to a more focused question about like, tell me about a powerful moment in nature and what feelings that brought. So with that narrow question, my answer was memories from childhood, the redwoods, and the emotions were about joy and awe and wonder. If it had been a broader question, you would have hit on my mom button. So I've been highly motivated and energized in the last 5 years to do everything I can for sustainability and environmentalism. And that has been motivated by my kids. That I came to a realization that I was worried for my kids, fearful of their future. Like wondering if they would be able to survive to the age that I am now due to the climate crisis. And so those intrinsic emotions, if I summarized it in a couple words, would be love. It would be fear. And it's also, there's an element of rage and anger at the system that is pushing us towards this conclusion. And those feelings are really powerful in me, and they have motivated me to do things in the last 5 years that I never would have done otherwise, including getting arrested 2 times last year in climate demonstrations, going to 10 climate demonstrations, like all out energy, doing everything I can, being a co-founder of 2 campaigns, and also participating in, you know, letter writing, public speaking, wherever I can, climate. And so I sort of at first was questioning, like, how can joy and awe and wonder take me to an effective place? But I did take action. And so I can set aside, I just wanted to put that observation that this went off in a totally different track than I expected. And I'm looking forward to part 2.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah. What this is designed to do is not to create powerful emotions, but to uncover ones that most of us have been suppressing and denying. And people are, I don't know if there are many parents out there who aren't already acting on their love for their children. So that's already there. But I know a lot of people who feel disconnected from nature and are content or resigned or feel powerless to do anything about anything there. And that's what I want to activate. It's so easy if you're willing to let nature fall apart near you, then you're willing to let it fall apart somewhere else. I mean, if someone says Bears Ears National Park, we're going to start drilling there, and I don't go to national parks and I don't really connect with nature, then and the only fact is, well, it's cheaper gas. Well, I like cheaper gas and I don't like it more expensive. So go ahead, drill. I want to go the opposite direction of that. I feel like there's a lot of that around. There's a lot of, well, if I want nature, that's what flying is for, because it's over there. It's not near here. And I want people to feel the other way. It's precious everywhere. Not just feel it, but be able to act on it.
Yeah. I know a lot of parents that act for the love for their kids, but they are taking flights because they feel like their kids need to experience something or have an opportunity that they need to fly for.
Oh man, I got a prepper friend, and he loves his family like crazy. Like I see him with his kids, and he's like the most loving parent I've ever seen. And he's polluting like crazy because he's anticipating he's got his place where they can all retreat to, and they can live there for a long time if they have to. You know, it's not some New Zealand thing, but it's he's acting on his love for his family, and he's polluting as much as anyone, maybe more, as a result of that.
I mean, it gets to the question of, do people know that this is an existential crisis? And I think if they did, the love for their family would turn out looking very different. We are part of nature. So if people see that nature is suffering and understand that our well-being is closely tied to that we're not going to have food and water if there's complete climate chaos.
I find, in my experience, the Spodek method is the most effective way to get there, much more than telling them, didn't you know the science? Let me tell you some facts. Now do you see what to do? I find it very counterproductive. It's very productive if I want to get into a debate about abstract things but not action. Mm-hmm. Not joyful action.
Yeah. Well, I did follow up on the action that I said I was going to do last week.
All right, so let's jump into part 2. And if people have questions, feel free to jump in. So now Ariella had that experience last time. So I'm gonna walk you through part 2. So last time we spoke, you committed to doing something. Before you say what the commitment was, what was the experience? I mean, I know you just said it a minute or two ago, but I'm going to go by the book here. Could you remind us what experience you had and the emotions that it conjured up?
Yeah, I described how beautiful and joyful it is to be in a redwood forest. And I talked about how awe-inspiring it is to feel so small and so young compared to these ancient trees. And
Okay.
Then you asked me to come up with an activity that would evoke those same emotions in me.
Yes. Can you remind us what was that activity that you came up with?
So I talked about how I like to hike barefoot because it slows me down and makes me feel really connected to nature. It's meditative, and it's just like all sensory. Like you can't help but looking carefully at the ground. You just experience being outdoors in a totally different way than when your shoes are on. So I had a hike scheduled already with my sister who was visiting and two of her friends who I either hadn't met or didn't know very well. And I also brought my teenage daughter along. And I think the idea was if I was going to do this barefoot hike, there was sort of a question of like, how would that make the people around me feel? So we did that hike, and the beginning was a little rocky, literally.
Well, before you talk about this specific hike, can you give us from the whole thing? Because there must have been some planning and asking questions, not just the physical thing you did, but can you walk us through the whole process?
The whole process.
Did you take a schedule or planning? Okay.
The hike was already planned. Nobody knew that I was going to take off my shoes. We started the hike. I took off my shoes in the parking lot. I got thumbs up from my friends and family who were with me. And comments like, oh, like, that's brave, or stoic of you or something, because the beginning of the trail was a little bit rocky. But then a mile in, the trail the soil changed, and it was soft and clayey and wet from recent rains. And I said, hey, now it feels great, try it. And so the first person took their shoes off. And we had separated into like clumps because we were having conversations. And then when the three other people saw that the two of us were both shoeless, then they immediately wanted to do it. And so there were 5 of us hiking without shoes. And then maybe 10 minutes later, somebody walked by us. We had paused to look at a view or something. Somebody walked by without their shoes, a 6th person, and said something like, you guys inspired me. So that's the story. There were, and we probably passed, this is sort of urban hiking. It's just a mile from the city. There were probably 20 or 30 people who had seen us without shoes. So we might have planted some seeds, but there was at least one complete stranger that walked past us without her shoes on.
Did you know did you plan yourself? Like, I won't tell them that I'm going to invite them. Did you kind of wing it? Like maybe you weren't going to invite them to take their shoes off too?
It was just spontaneous. It wasn't a big deal for me because I think I had told you this is something I've done in the past. Like I do it like maybe every 3 or 4 months, but usually by myself. So no, I didn't preface it with.
Was there something you were going to do also that was leaving it better than you found it? Was there something added to it?
I think I said that we'd pick up trash, but we actually didn't see any. So this trail is close enough to the city and well-loved, that there was no trash.
So I'm curious, even if you didn't find any trash, did you look for it? And if so, did that change the experience for you? Or affect the experience?
I'm always looking for trash. So whether I'm going to pick it up or not, I always see that kind of thing. So it didn't change the experience. But something else happened, and that was the morning of this hike. I was just thinking a lot about part one of this workshop, and about how it seems like a basic mechanism of listening first, instead of going up to people and telling them what your agenda is and what you think they should do. Mm-hmm. And so I was inspired to go talk to a stranger. So I live a couple blocks away from a sporting goods store, and there's always somebody tabling outside the store for a major environmental conservation group, tabling to get donations and to get people signed on. And so I went up to them and asked them, how do they motivate people? So this is a person that professionally tables. This is their job. And, you know, I told them I wasn't there as a client that I was tapped out. I already donate to too many other groups right now. But they took the time to talk to me about the tricks of their trade. And I was really interested in making that connection, and it felt very freeing. I felt, because I'd been thinking about this the whole week, that I didn't have any inhibitions about just walking up to this person. And the answer was a little bit predictable. He said, well, I have a tagline that I yell out to people, and the tagline of the day was protect wildlife. And then when people come in, he tells them what this organization has accomplished and then asks for money. But he quickly went into what he actually wanted to tell me, was that he wanted more respect for his profession, that he was self-employed. He was a consultant working as a, in this capacity as a canvasser, and that he was paid just a couple more dollars above minimum wage, that it's a hard job, and that he would only get commissions if he got 5 people to sign on a week. And that this organization can't rely on volunteers to do this because it's hard work. And then he went on to say that he was an activist, and what actually he was really excited about wasn't really about wildlife. In his own life, he was really excited about political reform. And it just made me realize that everybody has their thing, and everybody has their story, and everybody has something that you can learn from. And if we're entering a conversation of wanting people to be interested in our thing, you have to be ready to be interested in their thing. So just wanted to share that.
There's so much that, as a professor and coach and trainer of leadership, there's so much in there to tap into. And I'm going to table it all for now, except I think last time I probably mentioned how most of the time when I do this, the people do more than they committed to. And this is what happens. This is one example of one person, but you didn't have to approach that person. You did because of something different about this. The tone of conversation also is generally exploratory. What more can I do? What worked here that I can do more? And I love that. That's part of this, slope instead of y-intercept. We're going to finish this session, but I think Ariella and I'm going to connect with Ariella to answer some of the questions and help her along to the extent that she's interested in how to motivate people, how to lead in situations like this. So I'm going to table all of that for now and go to the next question in this. And it's painful for me to table it because I really want to pursue what you were just talking about, but I'm also keeping an eye on the clock. How about the emotions of this experience? Was there a journey? Can you name some of the emotions that you felt going back to when you committed to it? Like, were you excited, were you enthusiastic, anxious, or whatever? And then maybe when you're preparing for it, at the point where you took off your shoes and when they took off theirs, and thinking about how are you going to talk about it to us? What was the emotional journey of the experience? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, no problem. I was excited about doing it, and I had selected something that I was totally comfortable doing, and I definitely enjoyed being out in nature in a much more profound way than otherwise. And I felt like I made a really good connection with the two people on the hike that I didn't know before, because I saw that they I think there was a level of trust built, because now it's like we've both been barefoot hiking together. Like, I feel like I could go on to have a conversation with them about anything. So that felt like time had condensed, like we made a good connection that might have taken hours of sort of casual cocktail party conversation, but because it was like a barefoot hike, like 5 minutes was the same amount of like exchange than a small talk that could have been for hours.
So I hear comfort. How about afterward? Did reflecting on it afterward and even in the moment now?
Part of me is a little overwhelmed that if this is what it takes to make a good connection with people, I don't know if I have time and energy. Like these were people that I had never met before, and I won't necessarily see again unless I make a special appointment with them, or make a schedule something with them. And so I'm just sort of like overwhelmed with how much need there is in the world to make connections. I think everybody is pretty isolated and lonely given the digital world we're in. And I don't even have enough time to spend with my mother, let alone friends of my sister, so yeah, so I would love to hear feedback from other people. Like, how far do you extend yourself?
And is this on creating new relationships in general, not related to sustainability, I think, if I read you right?
Well, relating to sustainability, that I believe this exercise showed me that if we want to make connections with people and lead to people taking more sustainable choices and living more sustainable lives, they have to do more than just see us practice by example. Mm-hmm. We have to have a deep conversation with them, find out what their passions are, coach them through their passions, and hope that eventually they might get to a significant, reduction in their pollution. So that sounds like a long-term relationship.
I want to engage on that too. You're really making it hard to not to stick with the script. Because I'm approaching 1,000 episodes on my podcast. So I've been doing it with a lot of people and influential people, and also teaching people to do it. So yeah, doing this once, not that big of change in the world, but doing it with more and more people, and when you get better at it, like if I'm at an event and people are talking about sustainability, it's always some form of like paper versus plastic or nuclear versus biofuels or something like that. And it's all abstract. It's always like them, they should do it. They're, government corporations, that's them. And there's this premise of like, I don't want to do it. It's why, if I try, and this changes that. Like if I'm at an event and people start talking sustainability and we get into something like that, if I do the Spodek method with someone, it totally changes the tenor of the conversation to like, oh, I didn't think about that. I could do that. So it's not, to me, I don't think of it as extra time because I'm having these conversations are coming up anyway. But I want to do the last question of the Spodek method, which is, did this affect any relationships with you?
Well, it deepened the relationships of the people that I hiked with. Yeah. I feel closer to them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned it before. So but I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure to cover that. And
Mhm.
yeah. And how would you describe the change in the relationship?
More of a sense of trust and history, that maybe even if I see these people in a year, I think they'll remember that we did this.
Okay. Now that's the end of the second part. I could go on and I could stop. I'll stop here. It's a little abrupt because I do want to continue. And Ariel, I hope that we get to talk offline to cover more of what we did. But I want to review what the 4 questions were that I did in this session. So the first one is, can you remind me what you taught? Oh, if you just say what you did, they'll start talking about it right away. But I want to connect it to the feel. I want to make sure that they restate the emotions that they felt and what motivated them. So I say, can you remind me what you talked about with regard to nature and the emotions? And then I say, what was the commitment? So that's all the first question. It's to review the first part. The next question is, how did it go? What happened? And they'll often focus in on just the thing, just the time that they were doing the thing, the commitment. But I also try to get them to go back because I want them to remember. Often for you, it sounded like it was something you're already going to do. All you did was invite them to take off their shoes too. For a lot of people, there's planning, there's anxiety at the beginning. And I want them to remember that it wasn't trivial, because usually they have a positive experience. So I want them to remember it didn't start that way, because the next time there's also going to be a little hurdle that they have to overcome. So that's why I asked, can you take us back to just after you committed it? All right. So number 1 was remind us what the emotions, the situation, the emotions, and the commitment. The next is, how did it go? The next is, what was the emotional journey? And I try to bring them back again to when they first committed, to the planning, to the doing, to afterward. Either of those two steps, questions 2 or 3, could be like 20 minutes, half an hour. Sometimes people have like transformative experience. Sometimes it's like kind of pro forma. They just kind of, this is what happened. But sometimes it's just beautiful what they share. And the last one is, did it affect any relationships? And if so, how? And those are the 4 questions that usually wrap up something, give a nice sense of closure, and also open up. My read is that Ariella did more than she committed to, and she was happy to. She also expressed some anxiety, something like that, about it's a lot to do for the amount of effect that I had. But if it's something that she likes, then she'll find time to do it. She'll find ways to do it. And the more that you do it, the more that it becomes easier to do again. I think also, here I will often ask someone, would you like to do it again? And if they say yes, then we could either tap into the Redwood experience, the experience they talked about the first time. And that is usually enough. And they often will do more, and they'll want to do more because of the positive experience, the experience that they had that they liked the first time. Then oftentimes they may have done some research in the first time that they can act on. They often will want to do something bigger. They know that it's not just like, I'm not trying to trick them into walking down a path into like, haha, gotcha. It's not that at all. And so they feel more open. So we're not going to do it this time, but Ariella, would you be interested in doing it a second time, either walking through a new experience or tapping into something more?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a very pragmatic, efficient person. Some of this comes from my career. And I'm feeling like the SMART goal wasn't there. Like I catch myself saying, so what did this really accomplish? So I feel like I need to focus on that more.
Focus on having something bigger.
Yeah.
Do you feel motivated to do something bigger that you yourself would enjoy doing?
Well, every day, every week, I'm doing something bigger and bigger, but it's not based on the joy and wonder of a redwood forest. It's based on the love, fear, and rage of the climate emergency.
So again, we're not going to do it in this call, but would you be interested in doing something more in the direction of exploring and experiencing manifesting these emotions with nature.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
for sure.
if we did it, I predict that as we did it, you would come up with things that you'd never come up with before, that were effective and that you would like. And if you also other people start getting in it with you, you'll start having this feeling of swimming downstream instead of upstream. And then you may want to learn the Spodek method to bring 5 or 6 people around you into it, so that you feel like, oh, there's a whole bunch of us doing this. Then my experience is that when I'm talking with people who've done it a couple times before, and especially if they've led others and been led through others, it's just like, oh, you're doing that. That's interesting. I'm going to try that too. Oh, you're hosting dinners. I haven't thought of hosting dinners. I could host some dinners too. And then if they're in a conversation with me and I'm in there, I might be like, and you might say on the invitation, no packaging allowed, or, anyone with, bring your own bowl and spoon. And because, we're not gonna have anything disposable for you. And the point being, people add things in so they can learn from each other. So that's the second part. And you see that it could be the beginning of an ongoing relationship. And that's where I wanted to wrap for, I hope that I've given people in this workshop, more than anything else, you can lead people through intrinsic motivation that will lead them to feel joy, that will lead them to want to do more, that will lead them to want to share with others. Then hopefully giving you some how-to. It's tough in 2 1-hour sessions to give as much, to make you, great at it. But if you practice and practice, the more you practice, the more fun it gets, the more confident you get. And then I want to leave time for questions and answers if people have anything that they want to ask. Or since there are a few people here who have done the workshop, if they want to share anything of their experiences that others might learn from. And then I'll leave it open for, I guess there's only 8 minutes left, but anyone have any questions, comments? Beth?
I think what I got struck by in what you were sharing, Ariella, is that your experience in this walk was really a connection. It was connection for yourself to the earth, to the experience of feeling the earth under your feet, which is something that enlivens you from what you said, and that connection got shared with other people who got to have their own experience of what that connection is, not just hearing you say, oh, the redwoods are in danger, or, we're doing this. I think that one of our deepest challenges and reasons why we are in the position we're in is because we are disconnected. We are disconnected from the planet itself, from the moss under your feet, from the gushiness of the wetness of the, the forest floor, from the air we breathe, from each other. You had people stop and go, oh my gosh, I noticed. To me, that is foundational for how people make genuine, real choices to do something differently. And to me, it's where hope lies. I don't have a whole lot of hope in canvassing, truthfully. I don't have a whole lot of hope in that. I don't see that it changes people's minds. I don't see that it reaches people who aren't already reached. I taught nursing. I used to teach my students. It's like, okay, does information change behavior? They'd all go, yes. And it's like, okay, so you don't know any respiratory therapists who smoke, right? Oh, there's nobody in this room who smokes, right? We all eat exactly what we know is right to eat, right? No, we don't. Information in and of itself doesn't change our behavior. It's an important part of the overall picture, but what you just shared in your experience inspires me to remember that it's connection, and that it's our disconnection that allows us to throw shit out of the window, excuse my French, you know, on the street, that allows us to make choices that harm. And so where I don't have a mathematical description to say, well, this is how it's going to actually change bazillions, other than sort of what I see happens in viruses, which is they morph and they're incredible and that we're each a little virus, and that what you were on that hike was a little virus, and you have no idea what's going to happen with that woman who chuckled and took her shoes off and walked past, and what that connection for her is going to lead to. So I just want to say that what you did, I think, is exactly where we have to start, and that your experience just enlivened me to reconnect with loose ends or things that I have been sort of setting aside. So we do that for each other. So thank you. And that would be my view of how, one of the pieces of how this particular approach is different and offers a different kind of possibility than activism, which I think is important, but I think it has to be grounded in something that's more, that connects us more genuinely.
Thank you. That was
Thank you
beautifully said.
Yeah, I concur. I almost want to pause before giving anyone else a chance to say something, just to let that simmer. But anyone else have anything to share, or questions or comments? I'm curious if, for the people who are seeing this for the first time, how many people, if any, are interested in a book on this, a how-to guide, an online course about this, or even doing a workshop of Flight for USA within the Flight for USA community, or joining a different workshop? I'm curious if anyone's interested just knowing now, or if you're not sure, email me if you're interested, because there's a workshop coming up in April, which is a 6-session, 2 hours a session one, which goes in, you know, it's very interactive and people learn from each other. And I think, like, when they finish that, I mean, Beth did that, and that's where her comments are coming from. And before that, I don't think she ever did anything like it.
And the three of us who are here, Enya and Joshua and I, were in the same group and have remained a community of support to stay focused and carry on. So it's been really not a solitary journey.
Yeah, actually, one of the reasons this time works is that this is when those met, and this time is our meeting time for the alumni to get together and talk, and that keeps going. So I had to email everyone and say, by the way, next Wednesday, it's going to be this Flight for USA thing. So feel free to join if you can, but it's going to be part of this other thing. And so that's why they're here, partly because I think they would have been here otherwise anyway, just to meet with each other. And was it fair what I said about, like, someone says, I'm doing this, and then someone else says, like, what's that experience like, if you guys don't mind sharing? Josh or Enya, I would say, or Eugene also, wasn't in that cohort, but was in a different cohort.
I could say, Ariello, I felt you connected with me by sharing about your passion for protecting your children, and I could feel the ferocity of your love and your rage. And, you know, if you told me facts and figures about how many times you haven't flown, that would mean something to me, but this is more than that. And you did have the time to make that impression, and that nourishes me. And also, you absolutely inspire me to get back to taking my shoes off when I go walking. I've had this fear of stepping on something, and I mean, I did did it in a place that wasn't a good place to have. I wasn't even barefoot. I had clogs on, and I went to the emergency room, and it's a long story. And I know if I go out on the trail, there's no spiky grass things for me to worry about. And especially if I'm not chasing an animal that's trying to get loose, then there's no reason for me to be in fear. And I needed the reminder of that experience. You know, you talking about actually having it this week was different from just talking about how it had been sort of in the more distant past last week. So thank you for helping me feel reconnected to my own body and the earth and my barefoot life. Yeah.
Thank you. My kids and I have coined it the Barefoot Hiking Club. So you're all welcome.
Yes, can we join, please?
Yes.
Now you got me thinking, will I go walking barefoot in Central Park? I already go running barefoot along the Hudson River, like full barefoot. Will I walk barefoot in Washington Square Park?
Yeah, which I'm about to do on this Sunday, actually. So I'm very glad to hear and listen to that experience. So for me, right, I had always this mild depression over pollution. What can I do more? You know, like I felt always very insignificant, but I was always looking for more solution. What can I do more? But then after working with a workshop, you know, keep embedding this technique into more daily basis, I find that always a lot of opportunity I can connect with myself, with nature and others. It's just I became more conscious. And then definitely there are more joy over anger. So that really makes me to comment one more positive connection with just any strangers. I think that's a really something wonderful. And then for me, I'm in a sort of a journey how to make my personal life and more business life integrated. So in a way, in my education, how do I really bring more this awareness with nature when I interact with the kids? So this Sunday, when I'm taking kids to a Met Cloister, I made a program. They're coming with the parents, they're drive in, but they're returning. I'm actually taking them to walk down all the way here. And we're going to go to the subway station and take a subway and bus to return their house. And that's how I made a program for them to more aware of, you know, the different way of approaching. And now I may propose to girls, if weather permits, let's take off shoes and walk down those staircases to feel more. Because I like the way they incorporate with the foragings and feeling, learning more nature in the surroundings. So again, you know, the more I engage with the group and activities like this, I become more imaginative and childish, you know, like careless, carefree, right? So it's kind of really unleashes that emotional level that I can engage with many different age groups. So that's my experience so far.
I would love to have the stuff that they're sharing with a group that started with their baseline being, I'm already pledged to avoid flying. Because that's like a big stretch for so many people, but if that's a baseline for starting, I wonder what a group there could come up with. I would love to work with people here. Any other questions or comments from anyone else? I'm really curious, Jess, Teresa, no obligation, but if you have any questions or comments, or Samantha.
Hi, I don't really have any questions. I mean, it does seem, I will say, a little bit daunting to do, but I understand, like you said, a few more workshops, but I love the overall gist of trying to come up with people's intrinsic motivation. I think that's definitely the best chance for success in changing behavior and motivation.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it does take practice because it's like, you know, seeing someone perform on stage, like, I can't do that. But then you rehearse and then it works. Well, if that's cool, we could wrap now. But I haven't scheduled anything now, although my battery's pretty low. But I'm happy to stick around and answer questions. And if people have to leave, people have to leave.
And I have a comment that
I'm
I'd like
gonna leave first, but thank you so much. It was
to
lovely
see
to
you,
meet you, everybody. Thank you. See you next time. Bye,
Right.
Joshua. Bye, Josh.
Oh, and Joshua, before you go, I am going to comment that like the tone of the conversation, I don't find I find this consistent. Like I did this and oh, what else can I do? It's very different than I get when it's, well, nuclear is, that's what we should do because that's carbon free. Oh, but there's also this, and like it's always pointing somewhere else. And I wanted to call attention to that different tone of the conversation. Joshua, I started
Yeah,
cut you off.
yeah, no, I relate to that, but there's the other kind of person that's maybe a small minority, but I think all of us in the room are people who have put our own bodies on the line in some way. We're making our own individual choice, and I tend to know more people who are like that in some way, and they're in burnout in some way with like they've really been taking on a lot of individual responsibility. And I think that there's possibilities for adapting the basic essence of this method to, support the person who's like that. Josh, most of your podcast guests, in my perception, are people who they're thriving, they're very successful, they're influential people. They're not usually people who are really burned out. And then like a lot of them are like, I want a challenge. You have like Olympic athletes on there and like they thrive on a challenge. Like, give me a challenge, like make it harder. I need it to be harder. And that's great. And I think that the method also has so much value for helping the person who is in some kind of despair or freak out. The first question is the part I've had the best success with. I've been really, I would say, lagging behind in getting a hang of really getting a commitment from someone in the third question. But the first question has been magical, and I've gotten to hear things from complete strangers, person driving the lift that I was taking, the train conductor, that surprised me, and I people have absolutely totally blown away all of my projections about who they are and what they're about. And I've had heartfelt conversations with them. I don't know if that's led them to actually do tangible action, but I feel a real sense that's, at any rate, that has really helped me with where I was really burned out before I started the course, and it's been a great help. Plus having community. So yeah, that was what I wanted to throw in here. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Or Eugene came off on video. Was that to say something?
No, not in particular. I mean, I was just listening. I don't know if I have anything new to contribute. I was just going to say to Teresa's comment about what she was saying about the story sharing part being a little bit daunting at the beginning. I definitely felt the same way at the beginning, but after you do it for a while, it becomes the most fun part of it. I enjoy that part the best. The talking to somebody and then kind of putting the spotlight on them, that they feel good, they feel like they're being listened to, they're sharing their story, and somebody's listening to them, somebody cares to hear their story. And when you can get to that point where the people are actually sharing emotions and things that come from pretty deep down inside, it's really rewarding, and you start to kind of crave that, and you start to kind of want that. So just something to throw out there, that if it feels daunting now, know that eventually it is going to feel amazing once you've done it a few times and had a few successes under your belt.
And I would add that's genuine connection, which is what we're all craving. is genuine connection, and it is a structure that invites us in lots of different ways with, in Joshua's case, train conductors and Lyft drivers, to have meaningful conversations that touch something genuine. I totally agree with you, Eugene.
By the way, so everyone knows, I didn't tell them to say any of this stuff. They came because this is the time when we meet anyway. And I just said, be prepared that this is going to be a different thing than usual because it's the same Zoom channel URL. And I'm really touched by this. Well, I'll stop the recording and stay on a bit afterward, just in case people still have more that maybe they feel loosened up after the recording stops. But thank you very much. And by all means, contact me by email if you want to learn more, get be on the list for getting the how-to guide and when the book launch happens and for workshops and things like that. So thank you all very much.
I would also like to say, I don't know, I would be curious. I want to know your stories. So if any of you who are on here are interested in just having a conversation, I would love to talk to you, because I'd like to, it's like I found out about Flight Free through Josh, and I'm fascinated with people who have joined, have seen that as something that they want to do. So Josh has our contact information. So if anybody here is interested in having a further, more individual conversation, I'd just like to invite that possibility.
Same here.
Okay, and now I'll stop recording.